you playing?
Greetings, and welcome to What the Bleep Are You Playing? A podcast where we play a game, many times bad, and tell you why the bleep we played it. I'm Vampire Hunter Sean. This is Thomas, who would rather be playing Sonic Frontiers, and Mason, who is wrong about this game.
See, I wish you hadn't have said that because my original plan was to just right out the gate go, this game is bad. Now I can't do that.
Mason is wrong about this game.
This is going to be an interesting... I didn't expect this episode to be like the most divisive since Go Vacation, but I think that's what's going to happen.
I think there's a good chance.
I'm afraid for my life.
Mason does not like this game. I actually think this game is good. And at least I know Thomas had fun with it.
Yeah, I had fun. It's passable.
Yeah.
It's a passable Devil May Cry clone.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, I like the Devil May Cry games in the series, so this is just a Devil May Cry ripoff. If you're wondering what we're talking about, it's Van Helsing for the Xbox, is what we played. It also came out on the PS2 and Game Boy Advance. Yes.
The Game Boy Advance version got slammed.
Oh, just destroyed.
You're telling me it's not a straight port?
That'd be impressive.
You know, usually we jump into the developers and stuff later, but it's one of those that a lot of our Game Boy Advance games that we've talked about, a different studio did the port. So it did there. The same studio did all three versions on this.
Really?
So I'm going to guess they didn't spend as much time, albeit the studio, which is Sapphire, is that the studio?
I believe so.
Yeah, Sapphire had a lot of experience with Game Boy games, so it's not like it was something they'd never done.
I get the feeling they probably were like, we have experience with this, so let's spend our time on the PS2 version, make sure that one's good before we send it out. And then the Game Boy Advance version, they're like, yeah, we know how to do this, just stick it on the intern.
Also, something to keep in mind as we go through this, I've never seen the Van Helsing movie that this game is based on. I meant to before we started, and I couldn't find it in time.
Several critics say this is better than the movie. So.
Well,
oh, yikes, maybe I shouldn't watch the movie.
Van Helsing is an action-adventure video game for those aforementioned systems, which is based on the 2004 action horror film of the same name by director Stephen Sommers, who directed G.I. Joe, Rise of Cobra, the Mummy movies.
Yeah.
The first two Mummy movies.
What else did he do?
I know a lot of movies. I'm just now blanking on the top of my head, but those are the big ones.
I know he's done a lot, but
Yeah.
G.I. Joe and the Mummy movies.
Those are his big ones. Is with Van Helsing was kind of right after the Mummy movies.
Yeah.
Hugh Jackman and Richard Roxburgh reprised their roles from the film, so they got two actors back for it.
Richard is Dracula.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
And the game is one of the few games on the PlayStation 2 that can run in 480p. So, this was a big game in a lot of ways for technology-wise.
Back then might have sounded impressive. Now it's like it can run 480p. So,
yeah,
it can run on slideshow, baby.
So he also directed Deep Rising.
Yes.
And a live-action version of The Jungle Book.
Yeah, back in the 90s Jungle Book. Yep, the 90s live-action Jungle Book.
Yeah, Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book.
Mm-hmm.
He directed a movie called Catch Me If You Can that isn't It
has nothing to do with that.
It's not the Spielberg Leonardo DiCaprio movie.
Yeah, Stephen Sommers makes a lot of fun, entertaining movies, and for me, that's what this game is. Fun and entertaining.
The last movie he directed was in 2013. Hey, you'll like this. It's called Odd Thomas.
Oh, shit, I actually like that one.
He did Odd Thomas.
I actually really like Odd Thomas, too.
Yeah.
It's not great, but it's pretty fun.
He's a fun director. I legitimately enjoy Stephen Sommers' films. Of the ones I've seen, I don't think there's a single one that I'm like, man, I didn't at least have fun in it.
Yeah.
Now, this could arguably be his worst film, Van Helsing.
Van Helsing, probably.
Because as a movie, Van Helsing, great costume design, great makeup, great actors. You know, everything looks amazing. The sets, the cinematography, the soundtrack. Oh yeah, there's also a script. And it's not good. And because of that, a lot of really good actors don't come off as good because the script is not.
Oh crap, we forgot to put movie in this movie.
They spent all the money on the set design, and it's like, Mr. Sommers, we forgot the script. Shit! Just write it on the back of that McDonald's napkin, it'll be fine.
It is, it's one of those type of games that just, one of those type of movies that the aesthetic makes it worth watching.
Yeah, it's one of those movies, like, a common thing is, like, watch the movie on mute as, like, a criticism, but genuinely, this is a movie that, honestly, if you took out some of the dialogue, it might make it better.
And Hugh Jackman's doing a weird, it's meant to be supposed to be like kind of Transylvanian accent, but it's not great. And because of him trying the accent, I think that's why he, both in this game and in the movie, kind of sounds bored.
Yeah.
It's also just kind of a weird movie. But for Hugh Jackman, who doesn't ever phone in performances, it's a very odd movie at times.
And like, has Hugh Jackman ever done a good accent other than American and Australian?
He is Australian, though.
Yeah, I mean...
Well, no, that's what I mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
I should have said Australian and American.
No,
Yeah,
I
it's my
get you.
But, no, not particularly, and this accent isn't great, but it just... It feels... The movie, to wrap up kind of the movie subset of this, is... the movie is... It's fine and fun, and it is more in the guilty pleasure sort of movie in my book. I can sit down and watch it at any point because I enjoy the makeup and the art direction.
Yeah, Van Helsing is dumb fun.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the action horror genre, because that is a surprisingly big subgenre.
It's surprisingly a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah, you'd think
Yeah.
there'd be a lot of good, but no, a lot of it is
No,
bad.
it's just a lot of priests.
This is the same genre that R.I.P.D. would consider itself, I think.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought up R.I.P.D. That was my mistake.
Oh, don't worry, the sequel's coming out.
Oh yeah, that is. Oh no.
But yeah, out of all those, this is probably middling for it. Like, it's not, like, I'd consider From Dusk Till Dawn somewhat action horror.
Yeah.
It's not as good as that, but it's not as bad as R.I.P.D.
Yeah.
Would Zombieland be considered, or is that closer to like action?
I think they
action
more,
comedy with horror
I think the
elements?
comedy.
I
It's
was
the
gonna
same
say,
thing as say like Evil Dead 3 would be more considered comedy horror.
Yeah, whereas 2 is more of a horror comedy, if that makes any sense.
So that's kind of where that would sit in. But this game is very much a Devil May Cry ripoff.
Yeah.
It
Another
bears
thing that-
super
yeah.
similarities.
Another thing to keep in mind, I've never played a Devil May Cry game. So.
And a lot... I don't mean to pick on Mason, honestly. I did before the podcast, and I still do feel kind of bad about it. You missed it, audience. I screamed at Mason. You should have missed it. Anyway, a lot of Mason's criticisms for the game, he told me about them, and the whole time I'm thinking...
Yeah, it's Devil May
So
Cry.
it's Devil May Cry. So you just might not like Devil May Cry. It might be the keyword there. Again.
As a fan of Devil May Cry, I love this game in a lot of ways because I like that crazy combo style where I can... In this game, you're given a grappling hook, a gun, and a melee weapon, which is your Toho blades at the beginning, the 2 blades. And I love comboing the 3 together and doing different things and doing damage and fighting swarms of enemies. I have a lot of fun in this game because it's just Devil May Cry. It's literally the Devil May Cry system.
Admittedly, I don't find it as polished as Devil May Cry, obviously.
Oh, definitely not.
Because, like, one of the things is the combat in this game, I don't want to say it's stiff, because it's not, but it looks stiff.
It does. And some of that is, we could go into the movie translating into this, is the aesthetic of the game, the look, the gothic horror look, the enemies, the way everything looks is fine. But the way that faces specifically, but entirely people and monsters move, it doesn't feel as fluid as, say, you'd want some of the times. Also, it is a T for teen game, and there are some very, very funny moments where if this game had been M...
there's no blood in this.
yeah, well, it's T.
What was the movie rating?
PG-13.
PG-13. So it was aimed at families and slightly older teenagers. Like, this was a teenage type movie, so they were aiming at that.
So
There's still some blood in the movie, but not much.
So do you think the movie would have benefited more from being R? And then follow up, do you think the game would have benefited more from being M?
Movie more than the game, I think.
Yeah, the game, I feel like all it would have had is, like, some just blood splatters. and
Because it
Maybe
would
a
have made
little
some
more cursing.
And honestly, some of the scenes that are hilarious in the cutscenes are hilarious because the lack of blood. Like the opening, he's fighting a monster and he just goes to, like, and his arm just goes bloop, just like falls right out.
Yeah.
There's no blood, no wound, just It's almost as if you took Play-Doh and just it off, and it is hilarious.
It's like a little Lego, man.
Yeah, but the game absolutely follows Devil May Cry's style. You have weapons very similar, controls very similar, even to the way that they power up. One of the big differences and one of my nitpicks in this game, Devil May Cry shows the combos and shows the things on the screen.
Yes.
I think because this game was trying to follow the movie and not trying to stylize it, they chose to not add that in. And I do think that would have been nice just to see the combos and see your score going up and things like that on the screen Devil May Cry does.
I am really, really glad that you brought that up because this game does something that is a really big nitpick for games of the it gets better during this era, but it was especially a problem during the PS1 and 64 era where they just don't tell you things. They leave you to figure it out on your own they just don't tell you what you're supposed to do. How was I supposed to know to knock down that statue or hit that ladder if there was nothing? I don't need a big glowing neon sign pointing at it telling me to do that. But just a little so make it glow a little bit more than the rest of the room. Don't let it blend into the background or something. Help me. Because I am bad at video games.
That's why you buy the Prima Strategy Guide, Mason.
Oh, jeez.
All right, how much is it on eBay?
And I can get some of that. The puzzling in this game isn't great.
And again, I think that's because a lot of it is trying to take from Devil May Cry, which
takes from Resident Evil, which is a lot of, hey, you found this item, it's going to be useful later on, and things like that.
Well, yeah, because wasn't Devil May Cry originally supposed to be a Resident Evil spin-off, or maybe even it was a main game?
It was supposed to be Resident Evil 4.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right.
But
yeah, that's right.
It was so drastically different that they were like, no. So
they changed it.
Well, so we ended up getting two great, apparently two great games.
Yeah.
I know one of them is great.
Good franchises, but yeah, that is a problem with some of the gameplay. I'm okay with not holding my hand, but there is some of the puzzling elements there is unless you touch every item, you're not gonna figure out what you're supposed to do.
Sometimes,
and even then,
sometimes specific areas of a specific item.
Yeah, and even then, if you touch everything, it's not guaranteed that you're gonna find the thing.
Yeah, you touch the left side of the bookshelf, that's not the key, but you touch the right side of the bookshelf, that opens the gates to hell.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's if they just colored that part of the library just a little bit different and made it stand out more, that would make me go, oh, I need to go there.
This is an odd thing to bring back up, but remember Larry Boy and the Bad Apple? Mm-hmm. And how that had the library puzzle where some books were just out? Mm-hmm. That would have made it very easy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the difference between, say, a game aimed at children, Larry Boy, and a game that was meant for a lot of, because of the time and especially Devil May Cry and Resident Evil, at the time, it's don't hold your hand at all. They're like, yeah, you found this thing. You might need it somewhere. Hold on to it. Oh, hey, don't forget to touch this thing. So that's just kind of the era of those sort of games. It's why Devil May Cry games are, well, it's not the reason. The reason is the combat. But Devil May Cry games are known for being very hard.
Yeah.
The combat is more. I was like, no, it's definitely the combat.
It's the combat because Devil May Cry, odd tangent, this is semi-related. Devil May Cry is one of those series where it beats you down. It beats you down and holds your face in the mud, and it's like, you can switch to easy mode at any time. Twist your arm, you can switch to easy mode at any time.
But yeah, as we mentioned, this game was fairly well received, aside from the GBA game, which was not at all.
Would you consider it better received than the movie?
Yes.
By
things. Again, this is on average. The Metacritic score is 63 for the Xbox, 64 for the PS2. So it's about, you say if you get the averages, you're about 6.7, 6.8 out of 10, whereas the GBA was 2s.
Man, as an advertisement for the movie, which this is mainly supposed to be, a slap in the face would have been better. Jeez.
Uh-huh.
I mean, again, how these sort of things work, not necessarily to go. It's usually the reverse. You watch the movie and then you
And
want to
then
play
you
the
buy-
game.
oh, okay,
That's
fair
usually how these were. Now, sometimes, obviously, it would go in reverse, but as they were
Well,
usually released after or
they're-
shortly after.
I was gonna say sometimes they were released around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like what the hell was it? That Bourne game that came out. That was around the same time as.
There's a Bourne game?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
I didn't know that.
it's
It's a board game.
it's a game.
But yeah, I think the high review that the game got would have been GameZone. Gave the Xbox version an 8 out of 10 and the PS2 a 7.7 out of 10. They gave the Game Boy Advance version a 3.2. I kind of now really want to play the Game Boy Advance version just
Of course you
because I'm, I like to be tortured. But, also in Japan, Famitsu gave the PS2 a 29 out of 40. So basically it's a panel. It was 3 7s and 1 8 out of 10. So
Yeah, so
it's reviewed pretty well.
this game was actually pretty well received.
Yeah.
so.
And again, it because it's just basically it takes something that is really good and well received and just
Yeah.
slaps kind of a coat of paint on it.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, it's not a bad ripoff because it plays very similarly, it controls very similarly. It's a bit stiffer, but that might also be just it's not actually the controls; that's just how it feels
Yeah.
to the animation.
And also, I know Thomas mentioned this when we were there that because we played the Xbox version. But I'm the only one that really had any experience playing with an Xbox controller, and I know Thomas said,
Oh yeah,
I didn't really like the original Xbox controller."
let's get that out of the way. This was my first time playing on an original Xbox.
Same.
I've been PlayStation for life since I was a kid because
All my friends had Xboxes, so I played them, but I never. This is the
No,
first
see,
one.
I was PlayStation until the 360 came out. I skipped the original Xbox.
So this was my first time playing on an Xbox controller original, and the Xbox 360 controller. Let's say that's pretty much fine. That's good.
It's pretty much the best controller out there.
Pretty much, and then
It's up there at least.
That's fair.
and then the original Xbox controller is what is this travesty in my hands?
It's not great.
The start and select buttons are really weirdly placed. You have these weird
The black and
white-
they
yeah,
had the black and white buttons, which basically what the black and white buttons would later become are the right and left bumper.
Yeah,
That's what they were.
But at that point, like, okay, maybe this is just my own personal thing as well. I feel like I should be hitting the bumpers to pull the triggers. Like in games like this, I feel like the face button should be your melee combat and your gun should be on the triggers. Here, the guns and
I
the
think
melee
you could
combat.
set it up that way, but yes, the base controls are.
It's just base controls.
I'm gonna guess. I didn't see anything here on there, but I'm gonna guess this was designed because it was running 480p. It was designed for the PS2 and ported over to the Xbox. Is my guess.
Probably.
So probably a lot of it. So it probably was designed with the PlayStation 2 controller in mind.
Yeah.
So maybe some of those things because PS2 controllers had the two top
Yeah, they
buttons
had
as well. So
they had the
so that's
all-on
why the black and white switching between weapons is a very weird placement for the game. But also, so for example, the original Halo on the Xbox, the black and white, that's your grenades.
Oh,
You
really?
see, like that's actually that I don't mind that. That
That's how
seems
you
like
did
it
there.
actually kind of
Which yeah, I grew up. I played a lot of Halo on the Xbox because that's what my friends had, so I played a ton of it. So I'm familiar with playing a regular Xbox controller, and I had no problems with that because experience. But I could see, considering some of the controls are the way they are, if you hadn't played on an Xbox controller, that it could have been a little frustrating, especially considering this game, while not hard, can be a little unforgiving in moments.
If only because of the enemy swarms.
And like you bring it up with the controller and stuff, and I still feel like even if I was playing on a better controller, I still wouldn't have enjoyed it because
Mason, you were also the person who's like, man, I wish Sean brought in the Duke.
no, that was a joke. That was a joke.
Although part of me does wish he brought in the Duke, if only because I imagine there'd be like a cartoon sound effect, like here's the controller and here's the Duke, and it just dunks the table.
There's a big crater everywhere every time you put it on a table. But
It's like a crane.
but man, I have so many problems with this game. Like not even like the controls are one thing. and I could go off on those as much, but as I want. But the other problem that I have with this, you brought up the aesthetics. I don't think they're good, at least the way that they're presented. On paper, they're fine, but the way that they're presented, you know what it reminds me of. Remember when we, bringing it all the way back to the beginning. Remember when we played what was it called?
Marvel Nemesis.
Remember when we played Marvel Nemesis, and I believe the way that I described it as was the developers going, okay, we need a general art style, and another one going, well, we can start with the color green, and then that's it. That's basically what this was like for me. It's like let's go with gray, maybe some dark greens, and that's it.
See,
I think that fits that, but that's gothic horror to me, so that fits perfectly. Like, if it had been different colors, I kind of would have been a little upset. Like,
I mean, well, yeah, I guess that's fair.
Well, that's the gothic vibe. It works better for me here than it does in Marvel Nemesis, because in Marvel Nemesis you have all these brightly colored superheroes running around,
and also
these really bleak.
You're supposed to be in like the cityscape of Marvel Nemesis, and it doesn't the blandness. And again, Marvel, it's a fair statement to say that the color palette is. There's not a lot to it, but I think it works, especially for the source material and everything on it. If I were to I like the aesthetic. If I were to complain about the environments at all, it's because it is modeled after Devil May Cry, and there's not a lot of camera movement, and you cannot move the camera yourself and all that. For a game that at times everything's supposed to feel linear, when it's not linear, it feels very weird, like going through, and you're like. It's easy to get lost or not realize where you're supposed to go, because without a map and without camera movements, there's a lot of points in this game where it just doesn't feel like you can get from point A to point B necessarily, or the depth is off in a weird way.
Once again, I'm glad that you brought that up. I'm glad that you brought up the camera, because one of the recurring themes of the games that we play, I think both of you will agree, is bad cameras. It's a very common problem with a lot of the games that we play. I am willing to bet that this game has the worst camera.
Oh no!
Not just of any game that we've played, but of any game that we will play.
Oh, not even close.
Not remotely.
This camera is
Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace had a worse camera. Ben 10 had a much worse camera.
Okay, hold on. The camera angle on Phantom Menace was bad, but at least it was functional.
Not really.
The
No, not
camera
really.
in this game,
Not really.
it just...
The camera's functional. It's just that the thing about it is
fixed.
It's a fixed camera. It's a fixed camera on set on that. Like, it's actually for a fixed camera. If you're not used to those sort of the way they have it, this is actually a pretty good camera. It's running out of a lot of the Resident Evil, and it's fit with normal controls instead of say tank controls. It's very similar.
With something like the original Resident Evils that had camera angles like that. The reason it worked like that is because you're in a house for most of it, and so it's just changing like different angles depending on what room you're in. This game is a lot more open than that, so a fixed camera doesn't work as well.
Well,
in more open areas.
You can still see a lot of it. That's my main thing. You can still see a lot of the environments. Like, I would agree with you if the fixed camera again pulled a Phantom Menace, where you straight up cannot see shit. Like, you cannot see 5 feet in front of you. In this game, I think it lets you see enough that it's fine.
Yeah, and again, and maybe because I felt like the platforming in this game wasn't awful. And there's not a ton of platforming. It is fairly limited in the platforming. It is a lot of rock around, fight the horde, turn down a corner, fight the horde.
Grapple the
those
thing
things.
eventually.
Grapple a thing. So there's a lot of it. But because the way they set the platforming elements up, and one thing I appreciate is most of the places you aren't falling off of edges unless you are trying to jump, unless you are mistiming your jump, which was one of my big complaints in both Larry Boy and Ben 10, was that falling off, and actually Looney Tunes Back in Action as well, was that the camera did not do justice for the platforming elements.
Yeah.
And in this game, the fixed camera works for the angles on that, and because it's all centered around the combat. That's what you're centered around and what you're trying to do, which is Devil May Cry, which fits for the combat, because that's what Devil May Cry does.
But I was talking to Mason about this. Ben 10 was a God of War ripoff. This is a Devil May Cry ripoff. Man, all we need is a 3D Ninja Gaiden game. We got the trifecta.
We got it all. We've got it all.
We got the trifecta. So that was Larry, but
Oh, that makes the game a lot different. Man, we were playing it wrong.
No. Larry Boy was a Twin Sanity ripoff. We already discussed this.
Yeah, you're right. It was Looney Tunes.
So, to pivot over a little bit, the game was developed by Sapphire, as we said. A company
we
that
haven't
does
gone
not
through
exist
Sapphire
anymore.
yet.
Yeah,
They went out in 2007. This is one of their, not their last, but one of their 3 last games.
This was their third to last game.
And this is their last console game.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
Their last game ever released was Thunderbirds for the Game Boy Advance.
And before that, it was the Around the World in 80 Days Game Boy Advance
Oh,
game.
what a high note.
I was gonna say, I'm guessing Thunderbirds. That's based on the 2004 movie.
I think so.
It's gotta be.
Isn't that with the puppets?
No, that's the original show.
Oh.
The Thunderbirds movie is actually just real people.
Oh,
which
okay.
You watch it and you're like, "Where's the puppets?"
They, as a studio, they made a lot of games, and games I think we might revisit at some point in some of these. A lot of Game Boy games, it said.
There's a lot of Game Boy games.
They made the Hobbit game for the Game Boy Advance. I had that game. That game's not bad. I haven't played it in decades, but
They made the all-time classic Animaniacs 10-Pin Alley, the Animaniacs bowling game.
Isn't it?
they made.
Why is that a thing?
They made.
You know.
I like Animaniacs.
the
Why is that?
Tom
a thing?
Clancy Rainbow Six Rogue Spear for the PlayStation, and Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six for the 64. So
Yeah, I'm guessing the 64's got to be a port.
it might be, but then
Like-
they made it another one later. So I wonder if they.
I wonder if maybe it was simultaneous development.
No, because Rainbow Six, the first one was '99, and the PlayStation one was 2001.
Oh, I meant like the original Rainbow Six.
It's possible.
Like maybe that was simultaneous development with another studio. Honestly, if I remember correctly, the 2 games I'm most interested in are 2 Game Boy Advance games. These bastards, the Mad Bastards, made Lego Bionicle. They made 2
Oh.
Game Boy Advance Lego Bionicle games.
Oh, the Game Boy Advance.
They
Oh,
made
I thought you
one.
meant the
They made
Xbox.
one Game Boy
No.
Advance Lego Bionicle game, and they made a Windows.
That's
game.
right. But the Windows game was canceled.
Yeah.
That's right. My bad.
They made the ET Game Boy Color game, which is weird that it came out after the Game Boy. It's weird to think about 2001 Game Boy Color game.
Came out a while after the movie.
That's
But they made
weird.
one of my favorite, part of my friend. I don't know if it's a port or if they just actually were one that made it, but they made Army Men Sarge's War for the Dreamcast. I love that game on the 64.
The Army Men Sarge's Heroes games are actually pretty good. Then you get to Sarge's War, which is also really good, but it's weird as shit.
Yeah, that's Army Men.
Because it's Army Men trying to take itself seriously, and I don't know, it don't work for me. But
They did the Game Boy Color ports of the Oddworld franchise.
Yes.
Oddworld Adventures 1 and 2. They did a Game Boy Color Mask of Zorro game.
Oh,
I need to know how
Which
that plays.
They made a fighting game out of Xena Warrior Princess on the 64.
Hold on. They made a Zorro game for the Game Boy Color. Zorro, a
Yes.
series famous for being in black and white.
Yes.
What?
Well, I mean,
And Mask of Zorro was in color.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
They made
it's based on the movie.
they made StarCraft Brood War for the Windows and other stuff. Like they worked with Blizzard
They also made the all-time classic Biofreaks.
for the 64 and the PlayStation.
All right.
They did Rampage World Tour on the 64.
Legit, all I need to do. I'm not gonna make you guys play it because I like you guys and I want you to continue to be my friends. But I will show you gameplay for Biofreaks and you'll understand why my reaction is, oh no.
They also made one of the first Bond games.
Yeah,
James Bond
James
007
Bond
for the Game Boy.
Which I need to play.
You know. As you're listing off the things that this developer makes, it is nuts. They sound exactly like the type of people to make a Van Helsing game.
They also made Justice League and Justice for All, which was tied in for the original Justice League show.
Yeah, so they did a lot of cool stuff, a lot of things. I did, the game was produced by Vivendi Games. The only note that I had on them was that they were purchased in 2008 when they were merged with Activision, when Activision created Activision Blizzard. And Sapphire worked with both a lot of Vivendi games, but they also had worked with Blizzard, so it makes sense, that produce on it, that they, Vivendi and Blizzard trusted this company to do a couple of things, so.
I remember I looked at the publisher, and I remember I was really weirded out by a lot of the stuff they did. Not because it's bad. Well, I mean, they're publishers, obviously, so it's not like the developers, but some of the things they published, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Such as they did the all-time classics Barbie Beach Vacation, And then 2 games later, it's Alien vs. Predator 2 on the Windows.
They were
There's a-
Vivendi was a
roller
subset
coaster.
of Universal,
Yes.
so they did a lot of Universal stuff. So
Like the Scorpion King games, the Crash Bandicoot games.
Oh yeah. That's why they sound familiar.
Yeah, because they did the Crash Bandicoot games after Naughty Dog.
Which ones did they do? Did they do Crash Bash?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
They did do Crash Bandicoot: The Huge Adventure and Wrath of Cortex. So
Oh, okay. Oh yeah,
Well,
that's why they sound familiar.
again, publishing.
published. So
didn't
yeah,
actually
they
make
did.
these games.
Yeah.
And my final note I had on Sapphire was just an interesting one. Was that they were founded in the early '90s, and it was 6 people, and they worked out of basically a garage.
Oh wow.
Damn.
So when they
like
were
this.
producing things like Hardball '95 and Wayne Gretzky, heck, as they were getting into like NFL Legends Football and Bond 07 for the Game Boy, they were like tiny and doing these
Wow.
things. So like it's a really interesting little studio.
When
did a lot of stuff.
When did 007 come out? That Bond game?
98.
98.
Early
Okay, so that
98.
was Brosnan's era.
Oh okay.
Yep.
For some reason I was thinking Timothy Dalton, but no, that was.
No, for some reason I was thinking Timothy Dalton too, but then it was like 98. I'm like, oh yeah,
No, that's
way after
Brosnan.
Dalton.
Yeah, that'd be Brosnan.
But fun fact, this will make Sean happy. There is a Timothy Dalton Bond game.
Excellent.
Is there only one?
Yes, it was for the Master System.
Oh.
So I just decided to click on the James Bond 07 to just 007 from 98, the video game about it on the Game Boy Color. It looks like it was it was regular Game Boy. Its gameplay is very similar to Link's Awakening.
That's actually
Oh.
really smart.
It's got really solid reviews.
Because honestly, doing a Bond style Zelda game, that's actually a really bad.
that's a really
Yeah,
smart
that's
idea.
yeah. Because like it's all like if you do it stealth based and you have it from the top down, that would work.
Well, it's that game on, so I will definitely buy it.
I'm now very intrigued in it. I always like expanding my Game Boy library.
Anyway, Van Helsing.
But no, it's fun to talk about some of these studios that you don't exist anymore, don't think about or remember, and see kind of all that they've done. And I like that that's kind of become a subset in each episode that we kind of spend time on these
Like
studios
kinda-
because
yeah,
a lot of them
spend time on that
don't exist
studio.
anymore.
Yeah.
Shine a light on these.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Non-existent,
spending a time.
And you can kind of then see where they come to and it seems like because they were a small company and they grew from they did a lot of like, okay, what if we modeled it after blank game consistently? What if we did blank game but with whatever license we have? And
Hence-
not a bad idea, honestly.
Hence, I think
It's the same thing we said
Sorry.
with Ben
No,
10.
go
It was not a bad idea. If you're going to model it and do a game, might as well model
might as
after
well
a-
model it
yeah.
after God of War.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why 007 and I believe even their Game Boy Bionicle game is very Zelda-like, and why this is probably very DMC-like. They're just modeling it off after stuff, which is a good idea. So.
How awesome would it be if somehow this podcast got so big and had such a big influence that we brought a developer back from the dead?
Boy, you're putting a lot here.
And it ends up being Big Ape. No!
Look,
We've returned to Monkey.
the only thing I would like is somehow if we could convince someone to make another VeggieTales game. That's all I want.
That would be
I'm
awesome.
gonna go up to... Who owns that damn license now? I forget who owns that damn license now.
Somebody.
Yeah. I know they fired the voice for Bob. And
Yeah, I
Barry,
was about to
so-
say that would be very sad if they made a VeggieTales video game now, especially after they fired the not only the voice actors for Bob and Larry, but the creators.
Yeah.
So the moral of the story is I'm going to find who owns VeggieTales and hold a gun to their head until I rehire.
Bring him back. Bring him.
You want God's love? Here's God's love. And then I pull out the gun from Van Helsing, bringing it back full circle.
Exactly.
It's all planned here.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
I think, as far as this game, Van Helsing, one of the only last comments that I have for it is, I really, even though it's kind of generic, Devil May Cry weapons, I like the weapons in this game. I was fairly satisfied with the ones that I got and things like that. I really enjoyed, I'd grapple an enemy come in and then slash and have an extra attack and then, I'd jump up and I'd shoot down. It was fun.
Admittedly, that is a really satisfying thing I could find you could do in this game is Specifically, there's this really easy combo you can do with the shotgun where you slash the enemy, hit him with the shotgun, then just point blank fire, and it's like, damn, that's cool.
Or simple jump double pistol shoot was really easy, and that was my go-to in several boss fights. They made a lot of the fun combos simple. I know there are a lot more complex stuff that you can do on it, but making that simple, I really appreciated and enjoyed, and got a lot of cathartic fun out of it.
Hence why this could also argue for baby's first Devil May Cry, because in this game you want to do the double pistol, you want to do that shotgun combo. It's like X Y bam, and Devil May Cry would be like X X pause X again Y X pause Y.
Unplug the controller,
Pray to
plug it
God.
back in.
Hope that an enemy hasn't actually come close to you. Pray some more. Maybe add another deity in there. Hope that somebody's listening.
Put your right arm in. Put your right arm out. Put your right arm in. Shake it all about, and then maybe
Switch your controller ports.
It's
take the disc out, break it in half, put it back in.
Wait a minute, how am I supposed to do that? Well, you find a way.
It is babies versus Devil May Cry, and that's both a compliment to the game and also you know what you're getting into if you've played Devil May Cry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still not. Nothing that has been said during this podcast has been able to change my mind, because this is how I said it to Thomas before we recorded this. Disregarding the terrible, awful garbage camera, disregarding the less than intuitive controls, disregarding the general style that even if that's what it's supposed to be, I'm just not a fan of. Disregarding all of that, I just got nothing out of playing this game. I got more out of the G.I. Joe game than this. Like, think about that for a second. I got more out of the G.I. Joe game than I did out of the Van Helsing game. Like, let me put it this way: the G.I. Joe game is like a bottle of Walmart branded water. Van Helsing is like that same Walmart branded bottle of water, but it's only full of air and the lid is still sealed. That's what this game is. It's an empty bottle of water with the cap still sealed. That's all I got out of this game.
I just want to remind the viewing audience, Mason is complaining about controls and camera, and yet made us play Go Vacation, which still is the worst controlled game we have played by far.
More intuitive controls than this.
How the fuck?
So clearly this game needed to go on Wii. We need to get the Wii port over for Mason.
Yeah, and then Mason would like it.
There wasn't enough waggling.
That's fair.
Well, there is never enough waggle.
I mean, in fairness, would I have liked, like, railgun mechanics? Like, I'm thinking of this game with, with the Wii
Lynx
Zapper.
crossbow. Yeah.
With the crossbow, with the semi-auto crossbow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could get into
You
that.
merely adopted the waggle controls. I was born and it's molded by it.
That is fair. Mason was born and then the Wii came out.
Yeah, nothing else happened. Mason was born, and then the Wii.
So,
Anyways,
Did you have the Japanese men come to your door? We would like
we
to
would
play.
like to play. No, that's what happened in the hospital room. I was born and
And then they were like, we would like to play. And
sorry, family only.
And it's the Japanese men who kick your family out.
oh, goodness gracious. Well, Thomas, do you have anything else to add to the game?
Not particularly. I will say, just in general, look, am I saying that this is a great game or that Van Helsing is a great movie? No. But this is the most badass Van Helsing ever. I don't care what anyone says. Hugh Jackman in this fucking trench coat, fedora suit with these dual pistols, these buzzsaw blades. This is the most badass Van Helsing ever. And I think the game does actually... Because in a lot of games that even we've played so far, but also just a bunch of games in general, there's these things like, oh, you're the biggest badass of all time. You've taken down armies. And I'm like, I feel like a doof. Like, I think Phantom Menace, again, going back to that, is probably the biggest example, but also Beatdown, where it's like, yeah, you're supposed to be this biggest badass who takes down armies. And I'm like, I'm getting my ass kicked by the guy with the iron girder.
Yeah.
But in this game, you actually do kind of feel like a champ. You feel like a badass. Again, just grappling your way over to some guy, holding onto his head, then unloading into his face with your revolver, taking your buzzsaws and cutting these guys' arms off. I haven't gotten to it, but apparently you get scimitars later in the game. That is badass.
There also were your special finishing, like grenades that you could throw, which were pretty cool. They like sucked them in and things like that.
Yeah.
So I finished one boss with it. That was fun.
I did finish a boss with it, and I also I don't know if it's intentional, but when I was playing the game, maybe I just wasn't paying enough attention. But when you press the grenade, it'll just throw it anywhere.
Yeah.
So my favorite thing was I was shooting, and I pressed the grenade button, and he just tossed it behind him, and I'm like, oh, that's dope. That's incredible.
Also, a complaint that I've had in a lot of games is just giving me a good auto lock. I know I complained in G.I. Joe at times.
G.I. Joe,
Ben 10, those ones. In this game, while it doesn't give you a reticle, which, Devil May Cry and all that, but if you're just holding the right trigger, no matter what, and you're firing no matter what, you will always be aiming at somebody. And I'm okay with that then, because at least it's auto-locking to different fighting, especially when shooting. Would I have preferred a reticle? Yeah, I kind of would have, but for the style that they have in it, at least it auto-locked, because that would have made the game borderline unplayable if I couldn't.
Yeah, Sean's Saga of Auto Lock, Ben 10, a G.I. Joe, and now this.
And this, so at least you gave me something. It was something here that I could do on it. So, but yeah, on this podcast, we like to ask two major questions of every game we play. The first one being, how does this game hold up?
Well, I know we're gonna have very different answers.
Yeah, this is gonna be
named.
So
no, I'm kidding.
Go ahead and start and hate on it, Mason. Go ahead.
No.
All right.
Okay, well, you don't hate on it. Good. That means it's the greatest game ever
no,
made.
it's just... it just doesn't... I think this might be like the most poorly aged game that we've played.
We've played Phantom Menace.
And I love Phantom Menace. And I'll even admit that game has aged horrible.
Okay, second worst aged game.
Beatdown.
We played Beatdown.
Go Vacation.
I would rather play Beatdown than this.
You are fucking high. And I was the one who suggested Beatdown. You are fucking high.
I think...
And I think it's held up fine.
Yeah. Because I can sit down and have no problem playing it. Graphically, as I mentioned, a lot of the, humans, the faces and things like that aren't great.
I mean, they look fine. Mm-hmm. Like, for the PS2 era, they look
Oh, yeah, they look fine
good.
for there, but aging-wise, haven't then. Some of the environment... The way graphically environments aren't, it didn't age particularly well and make some of the game more challenging. Whereas you just dropped me in 2004, they wouldn't have been probably as challenging.
And I think another thing about the game, sorry, I just remembered it. It expects you to traverse the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And
a mini map would have been nice.
And Mason actually did bring this up where it doesn't really give you a lot of direction. Mm-hmm. So you're doing all these double jumps and whatever. And it's like, hey, you're in this room now. Nice luck, dumbass. This has nothing here. And it's like, great, what do I do?
A mini-map of some capacity would have been nice.
Mini-map, I even would have taken a Call of Duty style icon that you follow.
Yeah.
But overall, though, I didn't find any of it unplayable for that. So, there's some little UI that I think would have helped.
Again, the two of us and Mason have very different views. Because you're like, this is the worst age game we played. This is top 5 for me, baby.
Yeah, as far as aging, this is, it honestly, most of it has aged pretty well. I could sit down and play it. Look, I literally was like, man, I might go home and just sit down and play it solo. Because, it's fun.
Honestly, I may buy it for the PS2 because I genuinely...
It's super... I found a lot of fun out of it. Like I said, I got a lot of catharsis out of it. Killing swarms of people the way it did feels good. And something that a lot of times, even in the good games or the decent games that we've played, doesn't always feel good. And this game just felt good. Like G.I. Joe, for example, when we played it.
Yeah.
It was a bland game. There wasn't a whole lot of it. But outside of when you went, yo, Joe, you didn't have a whole lot of it
Like
felt
there's
good.
not a lot of impact. Meanwhile, in this game, it was the guys you were just fighting, the little dudes with the cloaks.
Oh yeah.
When you do a shotgun to them, they just powderize it. It's like, damn.
Or when I was struggling with the lady, the demon lady,
Yeah.
whatever, with the wings on it, and I was like, I'll just change my gun, and then just being able to jump and pistol around. I enjoyed that, and fighting the werewolf, same sort of thing. You can play bosses very similar, but there's also finding out what sort of skill level you want or what sort of strategy you want to fight the boss. I found a lot of fun just trying to figure out how I wanted to take them down as you gain more weapons. So yeah, I think the game held up, especially for the time and for what it is based off of and what it is. I think it held on pretty good.
Yeah.
You had feelings playing this game?
Yeah, quite a few. You
had-
heard me.
Sorry, let me rephrase it. You had positive feelings playing
Quite a
this
few.
Mason, we all know you only have love in your life for Go Vacation.
No,
I have no room.
Also, Flat Out 2 and Hydro Thunder.
Yeah,
But
there
mostly
you
Go Vacation.
And Ben 10, all the Ben 10.
Yes.
But
That
most-
is, there's no more room.
We've pushed out of by making Mason play Van Helsing. We pushed out of their mind all of their Ben 10 knowledge.
hey, that's bullshit. I know who voiced him. Who? It was Billy Bob Thornton, right? No, no, it wasn't Ed Mason.
Oh, no.
Our second question that we like to ask for every game is: would this game deserve a reimagining or remake in a modern setting? And Thomas and I before were briefly mentioning when we get to this question. But there's some interesting things about this because there are Van Helsing ideas being developed right now.
Yeah, there are these top-down RPG Van Helsing video games, and I haven't played them, but they don't really interest me personally. Whereas a reimagining of this game would, because I prefer a Devil May Cry style of combat to
That's fair.
the top-down RPG style.
The way that I look at this question is of this game, absolutely not. I think I made that perfectly clear. However, Van Helsing as a character is just so cool, and I
They've
think
struggled to get him right in cinema and any
yeah.
media.
Hasn't
They've
been-
struggled.
He hasn't been gotten. They have not gotten him right since, honestly, Van Helsing 2004.
Yeah.
but I feel like Van Helsing as a character deserves the game as cool as he is. So I would play like a Bloodborne type game as Van Helsing, like a FromSoft game as Van Helsing. I would play that in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
and
like
I don't
a-
even really play FromSoft games that
Yeah,
much.
like a Souls-like or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I wouldn't hate a reimagining or a remake. I would like it in modern graphics. But I said it's held up fine. I could sit down and play it now, and I have no problem sitting down and playing it. So, this is one that, yeah, there'd be elements I'd like them to maybe adjust. But I think for what it is, it works just fine in its setting. And I think I can definitely agree with both of you guys when saying that, Van Helsing as a character and as this movie and the design and aesthetic, I would love to see more games kind of trying to buy into this. I'd like to see more movies that buy into kind of this ridiculousness. Just give us a little better script.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, bringing it back kind of full circle to the beginning, I can watch Stephen Sommers' Van Helsing at any time. I ain't saying it's a great movie.
Yeah. And something, I think my final thing on a lot of this is really the only major attempt since way back in the day to try to bring all of the Universal monsters into one movie
Yeah.
immediately. And it succeeds so much
yeah.
better than, say, The Mummy in the, 2016 Mummy? 2017?
2017.
2017's Mummy.
Sounds right.
Which tried to do something there. This does it much better, and there is a lot of good stuff in the Universal monsters, not just on film. I think video games, there's a lot of untapped potential in them.
Yeah, especially again, having all these Universal monsters come together. Imagine, it doesn't have to be based on Hugh Jackman's Van Helsing, obviously, but imagine a game where you're playing as Van Helsing and you have to go and fight all the Universal monsters. Maybe the first boss is the Invisible Man or something, and then you go to the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster. Obviously, Dracula's got to be the big bad. basically Castlevania, but you're playing as Van Helsing actually.
That would be good.
I could absolutely get behind something like that. But that is Van Helsing, 2004, for the Xbox. What do you guys think about this game? Do you tend to lean towards Mason? Or are you
right?
in the right opinion, like Thomas and I? Well, you can let us know now. You can tell us your opinion on the games that we play. You can send us an email at bleepyouplaying@gmail.com. That's bleepyouplaying@gmail.com.
Find me a game with a worse camera. With a worse camera,
We've
won't.
played a
already
couple of
played
them.
it.
We've played several
I've
of
already
them.
played it.
But, and if you're listening to this on iTunes, Apple iTunes, 5 stars, give us that 5 stars, type in some words, tell us that we're doing amazing or awful. It's okay, just give us the 5
As long as
stars.
it goes to 5 stars.
Give us the 5 stars. Wherever you're listening to, share this podcast, spread the love, click likes buttons on wherever there are, and help us continue to grow. And with that,
And eventually we shall make VeggieTales Van Helsing.
that is the dream. So till next time, we'll talk to you with kind of in the similar vein, kind of style, like not necessarily the same style of game, but kind of the same movie-based video game.
Movie based, although much lighter base.
Movie with a Hugh Jackman character in it.
With a Hugh Jackman
Ironically
character.
enough, although this one does not have Hugh Jackman in the game.
No, it does not. So until next time.
Get good, you slut!